Welcome to the GREENPOINT Williamsburg News Magazine. Neighborhoods Today. In this edition, join us as REENA Marie PELC interviews mayoral candidate Rudolph Giuliani. And I'm Dick Mahan. Now, here in our studio with REENA Marie is Rudolph Giuliani. REENA?
In 1989, Rudolph Giuliani lost his bid for mayor to David Dinkins by a very thin margin. In many ways, it was a campaign based on race and image. Well, fast forward a few years, and Republican hopeful Rudy Giuliani is back. But he's changed his image and his tactics, so don't expect to find him dressing down and going undercover on drug busts anymore. What you will find is a serious Republican contender for mayor. Someone who has been focusing on the issues and the idea of change. With me in the studio this evening is Rudolph Giuliani. Mr. Giuliani, welcome to Neighborhoods Today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's great to have you here. Let's talk a little bit about your image. It seems as if you don't appear to be as rough and tumble on the outside as in years past. You're much more approachable, much...
I never was on the inside.
Yeah.
I was always soft and nice.
Yeah. Much more approachable, you know, like much, I guess softer around the edges too, but I guess most importantly, much more approachable in terms of letting the public in on who you are.
After you run for mayor of New York City, I mean, after you go through it one time, you learn that you have to kind of release a little bit more of yourself and not be quite as private, or people want to know what you like.
Has that been difficult for you?
I'm a very decisive person. I'm a person who's had very tough jobs where you had to make difficult decisions, which I think is excellent training for being a mayor. It's essentially the same background as the mayor of Chicago had, the mayor of Philadelphia, the mayor of Indianapolis. They were prosecutors like I was. But then you have to also get people to understand the other part of your personality. I have 2 children, I have a wonderful wife, I have a great family. I grew up in New York City, I love the city. I've run a business and took it out of bankruptcy. So there were other parts, a lot of other parts to me than just having been United States Attorney. And first time you run, you don't realize how much people need to know about you. Now I understand it, and I understand how important it is to turn this city around, to revive it, to begin the process of fundamental reform and change for New York City, which is not going to happen under the present mayor or any of the people that are running against him in the Democratic primary, all of whom are part of the political structure of the city. So if you want to achieve what I believe has to be achieved, which is a fundamental reform of New York City, it's really important to get people to understand who I am and what I am and why I want to do it.
You know, David Garth is considered a media whiz within the communications industry, and you have hired him to help work on your campaign. How do you and Mr. Garth plan to keep your campaign focused on the issues, especially the issues of change, as opposed to the question of race?
Well, we're going to do it by focusing on the issues. What this campaign is about, my campaign, is about how to produce more private sector jobs in New York City, which under this mayor, we've lost private sector jobs at depression levels. The city's falling apart from the point of view of the private sector economy, small business. We're going to focus on that. We're going to lay out plans for how you turn around the city and create more jobs, keep more jobs here, keep more small business here. That has nothing to do with race. That helps white people, black people, Latino people, Catholic, Protestant, Jewish. We're going to focus on rebuilding our schools and getting away from the kind of irrelevant agenda that has been permitted by the lack of leadership by the mayor. I'll lead the system, and we'll be talking about how to improve reading scores and math scores, how to make schools safer. We'll talk about how to make the city safer in general. I mean, how you police the city effectively to bring down the rates of crime, how you once again focus on fighting back against drugs. And this mayor has given up. I mean, 25,000 fewer drug dealers arrested last year than when Ed Koch was mayor. Herman Badillo, in the Democratic side, has pointed out what a tragedy this is and what a lack of leadership is coming from City Hall. So these are the things that we're going to focus on. Have absolutely nothing to do with race. They have to do with performance or lack of performance, our ideas for change. And I don't know what other candidates will do, but our candidacy is going to be about issues, ideas, ideals, and a future for New York City.
Okay, we will definitely get into all of those issues in a little bit more detail. At this point, you have already been endorsed by the 5 county Republican organizations. And historically, you've had wide support from the police unions, from the fire unions, and very much from the white working class. It's been said, though, that especially in this campaign, the Latino vote will very much be the swing vote. So how do you anticipate capturing, if you will, the Latino vote from David Dinkins' corner and pulling them into your corner?
Well, there aren't special campaigns, as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I think this city has had too much of that. It's had too much of the appealing to people in terms of their divisions.
Too much pandering, polarization?
What happens is you get people to start thinking in a divided way. What I offer to the Latino community is exactly the same thing that I offer to the Italian-American community or the Jewish community or the Polish community or you name it. I offer a city in which we're going to produce more private sector jobs, a city in which we're going to be a lot safer, and we're going to fight back against crime in a way in which has never happened before in this city. I offer a city in which we're going to focus on the basics of education and revive the New York City school system. That helps the parents of white children and black children. It helps the parents of Latino children. It helps all of the city. That has to be the main focus of the campaign, and that's the way you bring the city together, not doing this kind of special interest politics that is very much the way in which a David Dinkins or an Andrew Stein operates. That ends up dividing us. Now, I understand the different communities of New York City because I've grown up here. I know that there are some special things that each community in New York City considers important. So we'll spend a little bit of time on those things, and we'll reach out to people on that ground. I know that the Latino community in particular feels that it's had second-class status in New York City, particularly under David Dinkins. So we'll be talking about ways to empower the community. I mean, during the last 3 years, I haven't exactly been quiet. I've represented the Latino community on 3 occasions, the Puerto Rican Legal Defense Fund, to get additional representation for Latinos in the New York State Legislature, in the New York City Council, and in Congress. And on some of those occasions, some of the people that I'll probably be running against weren't on my side. They were somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So I understand the issues that are important to the community. But for all the communities of New York City, this campaign has to be based on what's best for the general good. Because by and large, we've forgotten the general good. All we have is like this pandering to this special interest or that special interest. So we're going to try real hard to keep it on the real general issues that help everyone.
Mm-hmm. You know, at this point in time, you really have no serious Republican opposition, yet at the same time you have been making a number of unannounced visits, town hall meetings, if you will, to all of the boroughs, right. As you know, as a means of basically gauging, I would say, the community's response to yourself, Rudy Giuliani, right. as Republican mayoral candidate. I haven't really seen Dinkins doing this. I haven't really seen Stein, Berdillo. Why?
Right.
Why you?
I do it because I want to run an independent campaign for mayor and reach people. I don't want to run a campaign based on political party labels or I want to reach out to all the people of New York City, and I think the mayor should be in contact with them. Ed Koch used to have a lot of town hall meetings. Some of them used to get pretty hot, but it had the mayor in contact with the people. When I ran for mayor last time, I did a lot of town hall meetings. I think it's the reason why we had such a strong secret vote. I mean, all the polls were showing that we would lose by 15, 18, 20%. Of all the people that ran for mayor in 1989, I spent the most time in the communities of New York City holding these town hall meetings. Finally, I learn a lot from it.
Exactly.
I mean, it is an enormously educational experience. It's a lot better than all those fancy focus groups that some of the other candidates do, because they're real focus groups. They're about what people are really interested in the neighborhoods of New York City. And I enjoy them. I mean, they're a lot of fun. They're enjoyable. Have
you discovered anything that you didn't already know? I mean, what seemed to be majority of, you know, the major concerns that all people have?
You know, people are very concerned about the school system. All people are. Parents, certainly. But even people that don't have children or whose children have grown up are very concerned about the school system because they realize how the future of this city is imperiled by a school system in which reading and math scores have declined in almost every district in the last 2 years under the leadership of this particular mayor. I understood long before it happened the so-called revolt that took place on the school board with regard to Chancellor Fernandez.
Right.
Because by having these town hall meetings, I was hearing this in Brooklyn and in the Bronx, and in Staten Island and in Queens, and even in parts of Manhattan.
Do you think the way the school board members from the outer boroughs voted, as in against Fernandez, and the Manhattan members having voted for Fernandez, that really was a message or a signal that the outer boroughs are really feeling alienated and really would like to be reckoned with, they'd like to be heard?
Yes, it was a signal, a strong one. The benefit of having done all the town hall meetings and all the campaigning that I've done in all of the boroughs of the city for the last 3 years is I saw that coming. I mean, I understood that. I understand the feelings that are at stake there, what's going on, how this city has been ruled too much for the narrow interests of just a few people, a lot of it concentrated in Manhattan. And what the mayor's got to be willing to do is not try to be a dictator the way this present mayor is doing and telling people of Staten Island you can't consider seceding. And mayor's got to be out there in Staten Island talking to the people of Staten Island and to Queens and to Brooklyn and to the Bronx about how he's going to share power. And we need a structure in New York City that isn't like the old USSR, which is essentially what is being offered by this administration, but a structure that's more like the USA, where we have a strong central government for the right purposes, and we share power with the local communities, give them more discretion, give them more authority over their school system, over services, so that they have something to complain to that's a little more immediate than this big, gigantic central government.
In light of that, do you really think that there's a difference between someone who can lead and someone who can deal with the issues and handle the issues, or do you feel that both of those things go hand in hand?
Both of them go hand in hand, particularly in a mayor. I mean, the best mayors this city have had have been hands-on mayors. They've been mayors who've rolled up their sleeves and worked real hard and met with people and talked to people and had their own ideas and had issues. I mean, mayors, LaGuardia, Koch, I mean, these weren't removed figures, austere removed figures. These are people who were out there in the streets talking to people, having town hall meetings, having interchanges with the community, having their own ideas, not having to read speeches, but being able to give them because it came from the heart and it came from a real understanding of what was going on. That's the kind of thing the city lacks right now. It lacks leadership. It lacks vision. When do you hear the mayor talking about the future of the city or what his vision is? I don't know what his vision is of the educational system, except to talk about condoms and rainbow curriculums. I mean, we need a vision for how we're going to reorganize it, how we're going to share power, how we're going to reform it, how we're going to get it back to focusing on reading scores and math scores, getting a lot more benefit out of the $7.3 billion we put into it. Mayor should be talking about those things. He himself has to be able to articulate in his own words, the mayor does, where he wants the school system to go. Otherwise it goes nowhere. The same thing is true with policing. The same thing is true with the relationships with the fire department. The same thing is true with regard to business development and how he's got to talk about how you downsize city government so we can decrease to some extent the burdens on small business so small business can flourish in New York City. These are things that have to come out of the thinking of the mayor of the city of New York.
Okay.
That's what leadership is about.
All right, and I will have you elaborate on all these things in just a moment. We need to break for a public service announcement. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Rudy Giuliani.
I love New York. We love New York.
We've been stuck inside our homes,
while our everyday heroes have been working overtime.
For New York to reopen
and stay open.
We all need to do our part.
And show that we care.
Look, man.
I wear a mask to protect you.
You wear a mask to protect me.
Let's all wear a mask
to stop the spread of coronavirus
and save lives.
When we show up in the mask,
we're showing up for each other.
Show your love for New York.
Because New York loves you.
We're back with Rudy Giuliani, and he's talking about issues and where he stands on issues. You have said that you believe the most actually pressing problem in this city right now is the problem of crime. What do you envision in terms of beginning to address the problem of crime? I mean, concrete solutions.
The most important concrete solution to the problem of crime is to have more police officers in the streets of the city. Physically present, patrolling, available to help people if they have problems, available to prevent crime before it happens. And the mayor has dragged his feet on accomplishing that and has diverted a lot of the money that was needed to get that accomplished to other purposes, has not hired the civilians that are needed to accomplish that task. I mean, these are criticisms that come out of all the reports that have been done of the administration. I'd make it happen. I'd do it because I'd be a hands-on mayor, someone who understands how to lead a police department, understands how to positively reinforce it, and not have this kind of division that now occurs in which the police department, from the point of view of the mayor's office, is virtually leaderless. Also, the mayor has to be a proponent for much tougher laws against street criminals, violent criminals, and drug dealers. City of New York is, unfortunately, just about the best place to commit a crime because you get more benefits, more breaks, more opportunities from this system than you do anywhere else. Look at the bombing of the World Trade Center or the murder of Detective Lopez that occurred a while back. In both cases, the people responsible for that will not face the death penalty. In another city, in another state, they would. The mayor is an advocate of no death penalty, even for police killers and for terrorists. And then he wants to go around saying he's the toughest mayor on crime. I said that tonight at a rally, and people laughed at me when I said the mayor considers himself the toughest mayor on crime. Under this mayor, we're arresting 25,000 fewer drug dealers per year than we did under Ed Koch. That's a 25% reduction. That's like taking whole neighborhoods and just turning them over to drug dealers. Like, you take over the neighborhood. We've got to go back to arresting drug dealers. We have to have the police on the streets. We have to have tougher laws. We have to do away with parole, which is something I favor and this mayor is against. We have to have a death penalty, which I favor, this mayor is against. I mean, these are the things that have to be done. We have to offer treatment to addicts. People who are addicted to drugs, who seek treatment, should be offered treatment. And we have to seize the property of drug dealers, the cash, the boats, the planes, the kinds of things they're doing in Florida and California, which we're not doing because we don't have leadership here in New York. Those are the things that I would do. And we would create a much more stable environment than we have today. But the cornerstone of it would be to have police officers on the streets and to have much tougher laws and to support the police officers of New York City rather than to make them the scapegoats, as this administration does, for the failings of the administration.
What then about the creation of the All-Civilian Complaint Review Board? Was that a good idea, bad idea?
It was a disaster for the morale of the police department, and the morale of the police department has a bearing on our safety. Police officers now have to consider the fact that when they make a judgment, and they have to make tough judgments, sometimes with their lives at risk when they're making those judgments, that they're going to face a panel of people who have no experience with policing. Does that make any sense? Doesn't make any sense. I'm a lawyer. Lawyers don't want to face panels of people who know nothing about lawyering. Doctors don't want to face panels of people who know nothing about doctoring because they can't make the sophisticated judgments that are needed to figure out if you acted correctly or incorrectly. The system we had that Ed Koch had worked out made a lot of sense. Half of the panel were police officers. They brought expertise of policing to the system. Half the panel were civilians. They brought the concerns and the fears and some of the problems that communities have in dealing with the police to the system. It was a balance. It was a compromise. We've now thrown that all out the window, and we're going to have just civilians, and we're going to subject police to judgments of people who know nothing about the intricate judgments that police officers have to make. That creates a frightened police department. It creates an alienated police department. It creates problems for our safety and protection that are just a terrible mistake, and the lack of wisdom in it is really very, very dangerous.
So then you don't really think that the creation of the board could act as a catalyst of any kind in terms of restoring trust between the police department and, let's say, the Hispanic and the black communities, or do you think that's pandering to specific groups?
It's precisely the wrong way to try to create trust and to put people together. You don't do it by negative reinforcement. You don't do it by creating a system that doesn't make any sense. And if you really have concern about that, you go take a look at the other cities that have done it. And what you see is that when you create all civilian review boards, there's no difference, no change takes place. So all of this turmoil really for naught. If you want to deal with that problem, if you want to deal with the problem of lack of sensitivity, then you need training, then you need command responsibility, then you need changing some of the ethos of the department, then you need to recruit much more aggressively and much better Latino candidates for the police department, African American candidates for the police department, recruit people of talent and of merit and of honesty and integrity, and change to some extent then the kind of thinking that might go on. I mean, that's the way in which you do it. You don't do it by creating a penalty system that's irrational. I mean, all that does is create, I mean, what that actually does is create more alienation and more difficulties between the police and the community. Almost any expert on policing would tell you this. Mayor Dinkins' 2 police commissioners have both told him that what he's doing is a terrible mistake. That's got to tell you something. And the first one was Lee Brown, an African American, who hardly could be accused of having any kind of racial judgment in something like this. What he was trying to tell him from the point of view of a professional, intelligent police officer is, you're making a terrible mistake. The mayor said, the heck with you, Lee Brown, the heck with you, Ray Kelly. From my no experience in policing, this is what I'm going to impose on the police department. And now he's got a situation in which less protection is really being offered to the people of this city. That's not professional and not good judgment.
You just mentioned the word mistake. I've got to ask you this question. The City Hall demonstration by police not too long ago, which really got out of control, do you regret having blurted out a curse word, actually the same word that Mayor Dinkins had used on another occasion when he was referred to as being anti-cop? Yet do 2 wrongs make a right? Do you regret having...
Do I regret having used the word bull with the rest of it? The mayor actually just used the second part of that word about a week ago, again, and nobody criticized him for it. I think the double standard is palpable. The mayor used that word in talking to a police officer of New York City, embarrassing that police officer. I used that word in context, repeating what he had said. And then we have this sort of pious overreaction by some of the media that supports the mayor. Sure, I regret having used the word because I didn't foresee the double standard that would be imposed in the way in which people would look at it. I don't regret for a second having supported the police at that rally. I don't regret for a second my support of the police. And I prefer, if people are going to view me as having been a little bit excessive in my support of the police, it's a lot better than what the mayor did. I view it as a heck of a lot better than paying for the funeral of a drug dealer, which the mayor did, something he didn't do for the funeral of a police officer just about a week ago. So yes, I have passions and I have strong feelings for the police because they put their lives at risk to protect me and my children, and I believe I owe them something.
You talked before a little bit about the middle class and the middle class feeling alienated. Can you be a little bit more concrete in terms of possible plans of action to help the middle class break that feeling of alienation?
Sure. What we've got, what we have to do is to say to the people of all the boroughs of this city that they're a very important part of the city, that we're going to start reducing to some extent the burden of taxation on them, that we're going to put an awful lot more a redistribution of money into the school system. We're going to make that $7.3 billion, which we put into the New York City school system, reach teachers and students. They're going to see improvement in their school system. We're going to put more money into cleaning up the city so it's a cleaner city. We're going to put more money into a police force that works more effectively on the streets of the city and make that money work for us in a lot better way. We're going to get more accountability out of the people that work for New York City. And we're going to give people more of a sense of kind of the positive things that make people want to attach themselves to a city. I mean, what we're doing in this city, under this mayor, is spending time responding to special interest rather than to the general interest and the general good. When people see that that will be the philosophy and focus of my administration, there's going to be much more of a sense in the middle class that they are attached to this city and that the mayor shares their values and their interests as much as he does all the other groups in the city.
Also, in terms of economics, you've said that you believe the city has got to increase its tax base to keep the business that we have here, to attract more business, to create more jobs. Can you be a little bit more specific in terms of plans of action? You know, things that people before you might not have offered.
Right. I think New York City has to do away with the taxes that are unique to New York City. Part of the downsizing of government has to be to remove the unincorporated business tax, the commercial rent tax, to show people a reduction in the personal income tax. The mayor wants to take this surcharge that he asked for and make it permanent, so that New York City now has really the only progressive income tax that any city in America has, except the District of Columbia, and that's really a state. New York City has to downsize government, take advantage of these surpluses to the extent that it has them, to start reducing and removing unincorporated business tax, commercial rent tax, the income tax surcharge. These are some of the burdens that have to be addressed. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have massive job loss in New York City. And if you're talking about people that are poor, even people that are middle class, the single biggest problem that they have is retaining, keeping, finding jobs. And if you could produce private sector jobs in this city, which I believe I can, and this mayor has lost record amounts, we're going to have a very different atmosphere in the city. A lot of the rage, a lot of the anger is going to start dissipating as people go back to work again. These are the things that have to be addressed, which I would address, that are being ignored now.
So in an ideal world, Rudy Giuliani believes the best person to run this city is Rudy Giuliani because?
Because I really offer the only hope of change for New York City. 4 more years of David Dinkins is 4 more years of the same kind of deterioration, the same kind of thing. New ideas aren't going to emerge from David Dinkins. We're going to continue to go in the direction we're going. 4 years of an Andrew Stein or someone like that is just kind of the same old permanent politician doing the same things that have been done in the past. I offer the best hope of change, of reform, of restructuring, because that's what I'll do. I'm not going to succeed at everything that I try, but I'm going to try darn hard. And I've shown in my past, as a United States attorney, as a person who took a business out of bankruptcy, that I can change things, that I can reform things. In fact, of the people running for mayor, I'm the only one who's had any kind of substantial amount of experience in private law practice, private business. I bring all of that to the job of being mayor of New York City, and a much better understanding of how to reduce crime than any of the people that I'd likely run against. So those are the assets that I bring, and maybe the most important thing, I was born in this city, I've grown up in this city, I've lived in almost every part of it, and I understand it. And I understand that the single thing that it is missing, the single major thing that it's missing, is honest, thorough, conscientious political leadership. And I can bring with me hundreds and hundreds of people, not just me alone, but hundreds and hundreds of people that would be dedicated to the task of reforming the city and making it work for the poorest people and for the middle class in this city, as well as everyone else.
All right, well, on that note, we've run out of time already, if you can believe it. Thank you for joining us very much.
I'd love to come back before the election. We still have plenty of time, and it really was very
We would love
enjoyable.
to have you back. We're going to hold you to that.
Okay.
Before I say goodnight, any of you out there who would like to make some comments on this evening's interview, we'd love to hear from you here at Neighborhoods Today. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Giuliani. Thank you.
Really appreciate
We'd like
it.
to see you back.
That's it for this edition. For Neighborhoods Today, I'm Dick Mahan. Thank you for watching.